the Hoop Collective podcast, where we talk about the NBA. I can already see MacMahon making faces at me. I am not Brian Windhorst. I'm Tim Bontemps in Boston, filling in for our fearless leader of the Hoop Collective podcast, who is on an assignment that we'll be talking about later this week that kept him from being at Game 7 here in Boston today. Joining me from New York City, who will soon be covering the Eastern Conference Finals with me and Brian, is our good buddy, the laugh track, the epic man of the pod, Nick Friedell. Nick, how you doing?
I missed you guys. How are we? Doing good.
Joining us from Dallas, Texas, where he's been grumpy all day, even more than usual.
All day?
Every day, but even more than usual. And
consistent with it.
He looks particularly perturbed at the moment. That's a vocab word he might not know. We'll see. As our buddy Ban MacMahon. Tim, how are we doing?
He's Ban MacMahon. He's the baddest dude in all the land. He got Texas blood as thick as mud. He's Ban MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Who the bleep put you in charge? I did not agree to this. I agreed to do the Hoop Collective without Brian Windhorst only because I thought I was taking over. I thought this was my time to shine, and here you are. Oh, we ain't talking about the NBA. We talk about the NBA. I wanted to say that.
I mean, you could have said that before the pod, and we would have been off to a better start. Now we're in a typically normal start where everybody's angry, so it's good.
You just started yammering. Go on.
Yeah, there you go. Good Texan word, yammering.
We got chemistry like Embiid and Harden.
Well, I would say we got chemistry like James Harden and Doc Rivers based off how the post game went in Boston. So here in Boston today, Philadelphia 76ers got trounced by the Boston Celtics in Game 7. Jason Tatum had 51 points. Final shot, a three-pointer over Joel Embiid. Well, after the game was over, to get over 50 points in Game 7. Tatum, 51 points, no turnovers, most points ever, I think, in a playoff game without a turnover. Really remarkable performance from him, especially how bad he was in Game 6. But Sixers guys were terrible.
How bad he was for 3 quarters in Game 6. This dude dominated the last 5 quarters.
Well, he hit a few threes at the end, but it was rough until then. And he would have been in a similar situation after that game if he hadn't hit those shots that Joel Embiid in particular and James Harden are after this one. So, I mean, I was here for it, but you guys watching it from afar, what were your takeaways from obviously a pretty desultory performance by Philly Stars in their biggest game of the season?
Desultory.
Desultory. I mean, that's a 5-star power word right there. Wow. Wow, MacMahon.
It also is very fitting.
Does that mean crappy?
Bad. Means really bad.
Okay. I just said crappy.
If they were desultory, I'm with it.
Listen, first of all, though, let's give Tatum his shine. Like, I believe Steph Curry's Game 7 record, how many days did that last? The 50 points in Game 7. Right. And, I talked about after the last game, a cojones factor classic performance then because he was so bad for so long and was able to maintain his confidence, humbly being one of the best basketball players in the world, as he so eloquently stated. Eloquently, that's about as fancy as I get.
Still a hell of a quote, especially to back it up with the performance he had today.
Yes. But then he finishes that game with that flurry to, salvage Game 6, keep the Celtics season alive, and then just came out and ripped the Sixers' hearts out. So definitely want to give Jason Tatum all the love. Like, hell of a performance, all-time classic, historic stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that because I was focused on the Sixers and just got done.
I was going to say,
my open and everything else. So
there's going to be plenty. There's going to be plenty of time to give Tatum love because he's going to continue playing. I just want to get that out of the way because we've got to dig in to this PHAILURE failure, Philly style, right? Listen. We're used to James Harden coming up short with the season on the line. We've seen this time after time after time. he can go to Houston. He ain't gonna have to worry about that anymore because they probably ain't gonna be playing in playoff games. So
Timmy McMahon, hold on. What the hell is Houston thinking? What are they thinking? Really quickly. Why in the world would Houston, who desperately needs veteran leadership, add James Harden, who at this stage of his career is going to the Hall of Fame, but he doesn't have it anymore. Not tonight, not the same level that we're used to seeing. We've been hearing about this for months.
No, this is the same level we're used to seeing. Listen, even in a series where he was absolutely brilliant twice, this is a pretty predictable ending because Harden, his track record, time after time after time, when his team's back's against the wall, he melts. We've seen this. I mean, you saw it last year. You see it.
I saw it in Game 6 against the Warriors in 2019. He was nowhere.
You see it over and over again.
What are the Rockets thinking? That's all I kept thinking.
Listen, they're thinking that they bottomed out for 3 years. Tillman Fertitta was promised a 3-year rebuild. They're desperate to be relevant again, and bringing Harden back, at least gives them some sort of relevancy. Although I don't think it makes them a playoff team. Well, but we'll have plenty of time. Maybe we can touch more on the Rockets in the lottery section of the.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We should probably focus on Game 7. The track has derailed us already.
There you go. That's what he does. Okay, so we'll call Harden out. That's easy. But dude, Embiid, you're the MVP. You got your ass whooped by Al Horford. And I never want to hear again, Joel Embiid plays both ends. That's what separates him from Joker. Because you know what they did? They put a bullseye right on his chest and said, pick and roll, baby. Come on up here. Oh, there's a jumper in your eye. Over and over and over again. Joker just went for, a 35-point triple-double and smoked a team that features 2 superstars. Embiid's, his playoff track record ain't pretty. And I know there's injuries. There's always injuries. That's part of it. This year he was playing on a bad knee. I understand it. I'm just saying, at a certain point, you got to believe what you see is who they are.
Well, listen, like you said, James Harden is very inconsistent, right? In the 3 games they won in this series, he shot 37 for 61 from the field. It's over 60%. In the 4 losses they had, including today when he went 3 for 11, he shot 12 for 55. It's 22%. Like, just a ridiculous swing back and forth. He couldn't have a mediocre game. He was either incredible or awful in every game. But you expected Joel Embiid to show up today and be great. Like, I thought a lot of things could happen in this game. I did not have a feel for how it was going to go. I did not have anywhere on the board that Joel Embiid was going to be terrible. I thought he'd at least be good because, frankly, he'd been really good the past few games, even playing on this knee. Like, he was really good in Game 6. He was really good in Games 4. And, he's played well after getting the rust off in Game 2. And right from the opening tip, like you said, the Celtics came out. They ran a ton of pick and rolls at him. They were getting a bunch of shots in the lane. And B just never really got engaged in the game. And even with that, him and Harden are 6 for 20 from the field at halftime. Tatum has 25, and it's a 3-point game. And you're thinking, okay, maybe Philly can come out and get a Harden, one of or both of them to play well in the third quarter. Maybe they can steal this thing. And then it's 33-10 Philly in the third quarter. Just an absolute absolute avalanche. And the final 15 minutes of the game are just garbage time. It was just a staggering collapse from this team that had played really well through that point in the series. Had pushed a better Celtics team to 7 games, had a chance to win the series in Game 6. Doc Rivers said after the game, it diminishes their season a little bit, the way this game went. I think he's right. Like this. Well, with some time away from it, I do think.
No.
Well, again, he was right. I was gonna say that with time away, I think things will diminish some, but this performance today is going to stick with them all summer.
I'm just sick of talking about the Sixers. Frankly, they don't deserve it. We have gone back and forth on the Harden stuff for years. Timmy McMahon, you saw it up close and personal. It's Houston. It's Philly. It was at times in Brooklyn. That's the other part with Harden to Houston. All those Brooklyn guys, the younger guys were like, hey, this guy didn't want to be here. I mean, he quit on the Rockets. He quit on the Nets. And now the Rockets are going to bring him back after what they saw. But Harden aside, and Tobias Harris and that just atrocious contract also aside, this is on Embiid. This was supposed to be the year where they took the step. It was all right there. They played great in game 5. They're going home for game 6.
They're
Tatum
up 6. They're up 2.
awful.
They're up 2. They're up 2 with 6 minutes to go in game 6, and Tatum hadn't done anything at that point.
Awful.
And they just didn't get it done.
Then Embiid did not touch the ball in the last 4 minutes.
Exactly.
He did not touch the ball.
I am just tired of hearing about the Sixers. They're not good enough. This iteration is not good enough. Joel Embiid finally wins the MVP, and in the biggest game of the year, he completely disappears. He was the one guy you trusted on that team, aside from maybe PJ Tucker, who really showed up early and then faded away. But the one star you trusted, the one superstar on that team was Embiid, and he completely disappeared when they needed him the most. This isn't just
and not just this game, going back to the fourth quarter of game 6 when they had a prime opportunity to close that thing out at home.
Yep.
But this is the issue, guys, to me, is that this was that moment where you can change the perception about your team and yourself. And when the time came to do it, Embiid couldn't make it happen. And now you walk into an offseason where, what the hell do you do if you're the Sixers?
Listen, man, we'll get to that in a second. I do want to say perceptions aren't necessarily permanent. And Jackson just sent me a stat that actually kind of reminded me of that. The stat he sent from ESPN Stats and Info sent us a stat. Embiid averaged 33.1 points per game in the regular season, 23.7 in the playoffs. That drop off, minus 9.4, is the largest by that year's MVP in NBA history. And the reason this reminds me that perceptions aren't permanent, that guys who, especially, Embiid's still in his prime.
I know where you're going with this because I was going to bring it up.
You know exactly where I'm going with this. Probably maybe the most embarrassing playoff performance by an MVP, certainly in recent memory.
I think you can remove maybe.
History,
I think you can remove maybe.
Was when Dirk had to get it at a press conference after his Mavs got knocked out by the 8th seed We Believe Warriors, a 67-win team Mavericks. And Dirk, that was the one series in his career where he stunk. Like, he stunk. Nelly was obviously knew Dirk inside and out. He had his number. Dirk was, there was some personal stuff going on at the time. But Dirk had a terrible series and was completely humiliated by it. And, later on in his career, talked about that kind of being and it was coming off of the finals the year before, which he had at least made the finals. He had made a deep playoff run, but he obviously didn't finish those finals strong. The Mavs went from 2-0 to losing the series. Later in his career, Dirk talked about those experiences being the driving force that helped him finally get over the hump in 2011. And there's time for Embiid. I'll be honest with you, I don't know that there's time for Embiid in Philadelphia. And if Harden decides that he'd rather, go hang out at his old stomping grounds and have easier access to Vegas and Scottsdale and Cabo and all that kind of stuff, if those are his priorities, and he leaves Philly, if you're Joel Embiid, like, for who, for what? Who knows that reference? That's a Philly reference. Come on, who knows it? For who, for what? Ricky Waters going across the middle and saying, I ain't taking that hit. So, but seriously, for who, for what? Why stay in with the 76ers unless you're just, decide, hey, I'm Dame Lillard 10 toes down. I'm not leaving come hell or high water. It was the other thing that was interesting. Harden, I'm going to say, essentially kind of said, I don't give a damn about Doc Rivers.
Well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second.
But Embiid backed Doc. I thought that was interesting.
Well, Embiid has had a good relationship with Doc, and look, this is the weird thing about the Sixers. Now, Nick, I totally agree with your position. I've been around this team now for years, right? We've seen them lose. There's now 5 out of 6 years they've lost in the second round of the playoffs. However, the weird thing about this series, and I do think Doc was right when he brought it up after the game, nobody was picking this team to beat the Celtics going into this series. Like, they're not as good as the Celtics.
They were up 3-2 going on.
I'm not. No. I'm not trying. No. Listen, I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I'm just saying it's a weird. The series has been weird to think about from the beginning because they played well and gave themselves a chance to beat a team that I think is universally seen as better than them. Didn't get it done, but like this team has had so many playoff failures over the past several years. Like it's hard for me to look at this like say when they lost to Atlanta 2 years ago, when they just completely blew it against a team that was clearly inferior to them and just lost on their home court in Game 7.
Listen,
right?
This was such a disaster that Ben Simmons had what might be the only playoff win for the rest of his career today when he trolled him on Instagram by posting a picture of him watching the game when they're down 30.
Yeah, I was
when Ben Simmons controlled the Sixers during the playoffs, things have gone haywire.
Listen, listen, today's game was very bad. And I was thinking about Embiid, or not Embiid. I was thinking about Dirk watching the second half of that game and listening to Joel talk after the game. I just kept thinking about Dirk in 2007 after that series and like the lowest of the lows and people thinking Dirk was never going to win. He was coming off the finals the year before and he found a way to took a few years, but got back up and got over the mountaintop eventually. Now, to go back to the Harden thing, Philly is in a tough spot. If they don't re-sign him, to your point, Tim, there's not a clear path to them being a contending level team. And if you do pay him, to your point, Nick, you're paying a guy into his mid to late 30s that is already an inconsistent performer at the highest level that you need to be more consistent. But let's spin this ahead a little bit to the post-game locker room. I'm in there with our colleague producer, Melinda Adams, the best, and we're waiting for James Harden to talk. And he starts talking, talks for a couple of minutes. I ask him about his decision-making process, about his summer, what he's looking for. Haven't thought about that yet.
Yeah.
Keith Pompey from the Inquirer.
Sure.
Hold on. We got a couple of interesting answers. Keith Pompey then asked him, well, James, I know you said you haven't thought about it, but what are you looking for in your next opportunity, whether it's here or else or whatever? What are you looking for this summer? His answer is, quote, I just want a chance to compete. Okay, well, you seem like you're in a place where you theoretically could compete. Harden talked a lot about sacrifice after the Brooklyn series. I asked him, where is your head at on that? He said he was going to see where it got him. He said, well, we're in the second round. It's the same place. I'm like, okay, seems like sacrificing didn't go great. And then we get to the coup de grace where the last question of the presser, somebody asked him, hey, you said when you came here, one of the things you were excited about was to play for Doc Rivers. Where is your relationship now with Doc? And do you think you should be back next year? Harden kind of paused for a minute, sort of stumbled, and then said, our relationship is okay, and then left. So yeah. I think that tells you where the state of that relationship is.
And then what did Embiid say about Doc?
Well, Embiid gave in sort of typical, Jackson just sent a Damian Lillard tweet.
Yeah, Dame calling Embiid out for.
Me and James, we can't win alone. That's why basketball is played 5-on-5. We need everybody to find ways to be better. Joel Embiid after being eliminated. I mean, the thing with Joel is it's very hard to quote him even in a tweet because, like, for example, his answer about Doc Rivers, he was asked, how do you feel about Doc? He said, I think Doc has done a fantastic job, done a great job the last few years, on and on and on. Then he veers left and talks about Monty Williams and Mike Budenholzer and all these great coaches that have been fired. And, well, sometimes great coaches get fired and it's a hard job and sometimes things change. And then he comes back and says, I think Doc's done a great job. He has nothing to worry about. He should be our coach. So that was in like a 2-minute answer. And he did this throughout the press conference today. Like, I think part of that answer where he said we can't win alone, he spent 30 seconds saying, this is all on me. I need to play better. I didn't play good enough. I'm going to get better. I get better every year. So I mean, look, Joel is a very good talker. He sat up there and talked for 20 minutes. I thought he took accountability for playing terribly. But to your point, Tim, or to your point, Nick, earlier about the Sixers, like after this, it's going to have to be like the Sixers are going to have to prove they can actually do something, or anybody is going to believe they can, because they had this sitting on a tee, and Joel had it sitting on a tee with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of game 6, and he whiffed on it. And then he totally whiffed today. And like Dirk, it's going to take him a while to dig out of the hole he's in.
But Timmy's, this is the issue to me. I don't care who the coach is. It does not matter. And I know Doc's record in game 7s and falling apart in series is there. It's a narrative that people love to use. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I don't think it was Doc Rivers' fault that James Harden and Joel Embiid combined to shoot 7 for $1 billion today, or 8 for $1 billion, or whatever the number was.
The players on that team collectively are not good enough. They have shown us that repeatedly, year after year after year. So, Mr. MacMahon, I am with you completely. Is there a chance that Joel can turn the Dirk storyline around a few years from now? Sure. In my opinion, his time in doing that in Philly is done.
Mm-hmm. No, I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to do that when he's playing with a proven winner in Jalen Brunson. I think he's going to have a great opportunity to do that.
Oh, yeah. I like that idea a lot.
There's other people with the Knicks who like that idea a lot too. I can promise you that.
Listen, this summer, we've talked a bunch about how these teams, there's a lot of teams with similar goals in these playoffs. And when they start to lose, there's going to be the potential for a lot of stuff to happen this summer. And the James Harden situation, like the Kyrie situation in Dallas, like, the free agents in Milwaukee. I mean, a lot of these elite teams in the league have key players available. Phoenix just lost. We talked the other day about DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul, like what's going to happen with them. You go around the league, there's a lot of teams that are in the same position now that the Sixers are, where they're disappointed with the way their season went, and there's going to be
looking for a head coach.
Well, and certainly looking for a head coach, and we will spin now. That's a good segue. Good job, MacMahon. The Suns announced, or Adrian Wojnarowski reported late Saturday night that the Suns had moved on from Monty Williams, their coach, who had got them to the finals and won Coach of the Year a couple times. Won a bunch of games. You guys both have been around this team this summer. Start with you, Track. What was sort of your? Actually, no, man, you covered the series. Never mind. What was your? You I think sort of alluded to this the other day after Game 6. But what was your thoughts on this, and where do you think the Suns should go from here?
More Hoop Collective podcast after this.
Baseball is back. Get your ballpark on with tickets from Vivid Seats, or enjoy hockey and basketball in all their glory with courtside seats. Whoever you're rooting for, there's nothing like the thrill of seeing your favorite team live. Vivid Seats, the official ticketing partner of ESPN, is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with the code HOOP. That's code HOOP. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats. Life happens live.
Yeah, I alluded to it in that Suns season obit that I wrote. Look, and I kind of soft played I said there's the possibility that Monty's job could be in jeopardy. It's been pretty expected, I would say, around the league since before Matt Ishbia's deal to buy the franchise was done, that Monty Williams was not going to make it another season. And certainly the way that their season ended wasn't surprising at all, despite all the success that he had there. And look, Matt Ishbia is clearly a hands-on owner. I mean, there are some Cuban-esque elements, and I anticipate, and talking to people around the league, talking to people in Phoenix, I anticipate that there's going to be a pretty significant front office renovation. That already started when he hired Josh Bartelstein, who has significant experience both business and basketball in Detroit, as the team's CEO. And the question around the league has been, would James Jones survive with the Suns? Would he be part of this thing moving forward? And look, I used to joke that Donnie Nelson's title in Dallas as president of basketball operations was misleading, because he was really the secretary of basketball operations, Mark Cuban's secretary. And I'm not. I think that might apply here. I think that might apply here as well. But look, they're down 30 at halftime of a home elimination game for the second
I feel like
year.
I was going to say, I feel like you've been in 2 of those in a row now, McMahon. Speaking of teams getting routed in elimination games.
I run into one of our scouting buddies in the stairwell, and he put it pretty simply and pretty accurately. Some heads are going to roll for this one. And that has started. I think it's going to continue. I know they're going to try like hell to trade DeAndre Ayton. I think there will be takers. I would be surprised if DeAndre Ayton's back next year. I know they are going to explore the market for Chris Paul, as we talked about last week. That one I think could be a little bit more interesting. We'll see what that market is.
Who's clamoring for Chris Paul?
Look, depends on what you're giving
at the money that he's on right now.
Yeah, but the money's not. Look, it's 15.8 guaranteed up till June 28th, 30.8. If you just want to straight up look at it as an expiring, it might make sense for the Suns to take back a contract or two that's not necessarily a favorable deal, but they're players who can, are legitimate rotation players. Because what the Suns, there are not many teams in the league there might be no teams in the league that have 2 stars at the level of a Booker and Durant. Like, they have 2 absolute superstars. They have no depth. So if they can turn Chris Paul into a couple of serviceable rotation players, even if the salaries aren't great, I think you got to take a serious look at that. And honestly, the same thing with DeAndre Ayton. I'll say this, like, obviously the Ayton Monty Williams relationship was bad. I don't necessarily know that firing Monty Williams increases the odds of DeAndre Ayton remaining in the desert. I think that there's a lot of people on both sides that are just about ready for that thing to go its separate ways.
Well, and this team only has so many tradable assets to begin with, right? And to your point, McMahon, if you've got Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, as I've talked about since the trade, they just didn't have the depth around them to really make a serious run. One of the ways you do that is if you diversify those 2 big contracts you have into, like you said, multiple rotation players. But Nick, you spent probably more time around Durant than just about anybody the past several years. Obviously covered him with Golden State and with Brooklyn. You covered him with the Suns here a little bit this year. After watching these playoffs going in the offseason, what is your sense of what we need to see from Phoenix in terms of trying to be able to take a step forward to be able to compete with these teams at the top of the West?
I think they're in trouble. I mean, guys, I was flat wrong about the Suns this year. I thought with Kevin coming in at the level he was playing at, the level he's still playing at, that this was it right now. Go do it. But Chris Paul gets hurt because Chris Paul seemingly always gets hurt now at the end of the season.
He's 38.
Exactly. I mean, Ayton isn't who we thought he was. He disappeared in that last series. And Mr. McMahon, as you were talking about, I don't know if there's a team that has Durant and Booker, 2 stars at that level. All I kept thinking in my head was, this is the Nets all over again. Oh my gosh, Durant and Kyrie. These 2 guys are so incredible. What's behind them? And look, I remember Dorian Finney-Smith said to me last year during the Western Conference Finals, I'm kind of talking about big picture math stuff, and he said that super team don't work. Now, he ended up getting traded less than a year later. The Mavericks trying to put together a little super team type of action, which, by the way, didn't work. But yeah, 2 stars and no depth equals a second round exit, if that. And
look at
I was just going to say this: if you're looking at the way the Suns are going, guys, how do you improve with no picks? They gave up all of it to get Kevin, and you get
a pick or 2 for Ayton. That's part of it,
and that's what the Nets are now trying to redo. I feel like the Nets are now a step ahead of where the Suns may be a year or 2 down the line. This is the thing, though. We started off the conversation about the Sixers and Doc and what happens. Now we're on the Suns and Monty Williams. coaching is incredibly important in the league. But if you don't have the right players, I don't care who your coach is. It's just not going to make that big of a difference no matter what.
Right.
So Monty was respected like crazy within that Suns organization. Kevin Durant loves Monty Williams. You're telling me that a coach is going to do that much better with the pieces in place that the Suns have? Good luck to Phoenix and everybody out there.
Well, that was the thing I was laughing about when, during that series, especially during the second round, right? Because what I was going to say before, Nick, was when you mentioned the Nets comparison, like obviously in the first round, they're playing a Clipper team that is, especially after Kawhi, so if their two best players are out, right? Then they play Denver, and it looked an awful lot like, even though it went an extra game or two, like the Nets last year playing against the Celtics, who were just miles better.
The varsity and the JV.
Yeah, it just didn't look competitive. And I was laughing during the series when people are getting on Monty Williams for choosing various pieces of these motley crew of minimum salary rotation guys to choose from, and like getting angry about him picking this guy over that guy, when the issue is he's choosing from a collection of, misfit toys essentially that are not going to be good enough for any team to compete at that kind of level, which is where they have to find the depth around those guys. And it's going to be harder to do that with the fact that the new CBA coming in is going to restrict a team like that from having access to the mid-level exception if they go over the tax and these other elements that the Warriors and some of these other teams have had over the past few years, with a guy like Matt Ishbia, who, like Cuban early on, seems like he's very willing to spend a lot of money too, but that advantage has sort of been taken away. And that's one extra tool out of the toolbox. And it puts them in a position where they got to try to turn this thing around really quick, because, I remember talking to people when they made the trade, and you sort of looked at it as you got this year and you got next year. And at that point, Kevin Durant's going to be 36, and you have to start going, yeesh, how good is he going to be able to play at that level and stay healthy enough at that point? And you're out of the first playoffs. You have one off season and one trade deadline to get this team to a position where it can compete with Denver and these other teams at the top of the West. And if you look at that second round series, it's going to take a lot of work for them to catch up to Denver, because it took Devin and Kevin having 1,000 points in those two games to barely win. Like those were close games that they barely won at home. And other than that, it just wasn't that competitive.
Yeah, and look, you can say, hey, LeBron's 38. He's still going strong, and maybe KD will. LeBron obviously has not been as durable in the last few years, but throughout his career, he was one of the most durable stars that the NBA's ever seen. I mean, this guy was a complete machine. And unfortunately, KD's got an extensive injury history.
And by the way, so does Devin
years.
Booker too. Devin Booker's missed a bunch of time with stuff. He played 52 or 53 games this year. That's why I didn't vote for him for All NBA. I didn't think he played enough games. Obviously, talent-wise, he's more than good enough to be one of the top 15 players in the league. But that's another thing to factor in. Now, we skipped by it a little bit earlier, but before the pod is back on Wednesday, we'll see the Western Conference Finals start. We've talked about Denver a bunch. They're obviously playing the Lakers. Nobody's ever heard of them in the conference finals. Tim, you just covered that series. As you kind of look at it going into it, what's your read on how this thing is going to go, and what are the things you're looking for as this thing gets started?
I mean, I think the Nuggets win the series, but look, we've been dismissive of the Lakers going back to when they made the deals to restructure the roster, to renovate the roster.
Some of us have been. Other people on the pod have called it a top 6 roster, and they were correct the way it started.
Yeah, look, and he said top 6 in the West, and we laughed at him. Obviously, we were dead ass wrong. Yeah, you've got to respect what the Lakers have done. You've got to acknowledge that Anthony Davis defensively has absolutely been a dominant force throughout the playoffs. He's had some offensive duds, but defensively, this guy has been as impactful as I have seen. LeBron at the ripe old age of 38 is still, on the very short list of the best players in the league. And then some of these pieces, hey, D'Angelo Russell, it's hit or miss, but some of his hits, he's hit some homers for him. Austin Reeves is a legit high quality player. It's going to be fascinating to see what kind of contract he gets this summer, because he's an impactful, high end starter. We can go on down the list, but what I'm fired up to watch in this series, obviously the big men. I mean, I just talked about what Anthony Davis is doing defensively, and Joker is Listen, I was pondering the other day while sipping a brewski
pondering.
or twoski. Pondering while sipping a brewski or twoski.
That's never happened before.
Just thinking about how fun Joker is to watch play. And like, who is like, God, we've never seen anybody like, and it hit me. You know what Joker is? You know who he is? He is the basketball love child of Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash. I mean, he is a blend of those two, but he's 280. I mean, just this guy, you know, like his like we always talk about his passing, and obviously we're talking Nash there, just the vision, but at 7 feet, able to see over things, everybody, and make any pass that most guys couldn't even dream of. We skip over the fact this guy is an absolute scoring machine and like can turn it up when and his game does remind me of Dirk. Because as much as we talk about, you know, Dirk is like the guy who changed the game as a 3-point shooter, he was a mid-range master, and Dirk just had the ability to. I remember Tyson Chandler said it doesn't matter what's going on with Dirk's body below the shoulders. He can be getting banged, he can be off balance, he can be turned. He said as long as his wrist can get, you know, be facing the rim, he's got a really good chance to make a shot from basically, you know, anywhere 15 feet and in. And Joker is the same way, except he's also one of the best passers that we've ever seen. And so he's going to drag AD out of his comfort zone. And, you know, AD's been closing the paint down. Well, he's going to have to try to close the paint down while dealing with Joker on the perimeter, dealing with Joker at the elbow. And I can't wait to see how that matchup unfolds.
This is Jokic's moment. You want to talk about perception changes, and the Sixers had theirs. All Embiid had to do in game 6 or game 7 was finish and make it happen. And for the rest of the time, everybody goes, okay, well, he can get him past that level. It's right there for the taking for Denver and Jokic right now. And he has been terrific throughout this postseason. He's been great again throughout the regular season. But if you want to earn respect, you do it in the playoffs, and there's no better opportunity than doing it against LeBron and Anthony Davis. I believe the Nuggets can do it. I think it is their time. I think they're just a little bit better for as well as the Lakers have played since they made all those moves. But if he doesn't do it right now, I don't know if there's going to be a better opportunity. So I believe that Jokic sees what's in front of him and will take advantage of it. But guys, if LeBron gets to another finals and Anthony Davis can stay healthy and be consistent, not only is our boy McTen going to be just loving life, but there are all these different storylines about legacies and everything else. LeBron will only strengthen his at the same time. People are going to wonder the same thing about Jokic that they do about Joel Embiid right now. Hey, he's great in the regular season. He can get you.
No, I don't want to hear that. The man just averaged a 35-point triple-double in
but
the playoff series.
Neither one of them can get through in the playoffs. That's the difference.
Well, hold on. Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. Joel just lost in the second round in ridiculous fashion in game 7. Nikola Jokic just averaged 34, 13, and 10 triple-double, shooting 57% from the field and 44% from 3 to get to the conference finals.
No, I don't.
No, wait a second. No, hold on. Wait a second.
I don't think it matters.
Bontemps doesn't like interrupting. Hold on. Bontemps does not like interrupting.
That was the perfect line at the.
Listen, we got lots of perfect lines today. Your light is very bright, there, pal.
Seriously,
there's
Go
the track.
for it, Timmy B. Go for
the track.
it.
The track has taken us off the track for you.
Get back to your point, Bontemps, because you're actually making a good one for a change.
I said coming into the playoffs, that Nikola Jokic had more pressure on him than any player in the league for just the same reason that you just laid out, right? Denver, for the last couple of years, didn't have a chance to really advance. They got through to the conference finals in the bubble. Obviously, we have a rematch of both conference finals in the bubble, by the way, which is an interesting twist. But that was an offensively charged environment. Then Denver wasn't healthy after that. It was like, all right, Denver's number one seed. The West hasn't been very good this year. Let's see what they can do. I think your point is partially right in that I think for Jokic to like fully ascend as a superstar in terms of the national consciousness, for him to do that, they need to beat the Lakers in this series. Take down LeBron, take down AD, show the national populace that has not paid a lot of attention to Denver, which still can't even watch games in its own market because of their whole situation with altitude. This is the opportunity for him to break through and do that. I think MacMahon is 100% right that the idea that he can't get it done in the playoffs, I think that goes away with the way he played in particular against Phoenix, a team that,
and he's been to a conference finals. The last time they had a healthy co-star for the last time Jamal Murray was healthy, they were in the conference finals. Also,
that's right.
Embiid rather, say what you want, his production slipped significantly. You compare his regular season stats, obviously we talked about this year, over the course of his career. His regular season numbers are significantly better than his playoff numbers. Joker's numbers are significantly better in the playoffs. He's not been you can talk about some defensive stuff, whatever. He has brought it in the playoffs on a consistent basis throughout his career. They just haven't always been able to advance. But dude, you take any team's second best player, they're not going to do any damage. And so how can you hold the last 2 years against them?
I agree with you. All I would say is this, from a much broader standpoint, the narrative around both guys is in a similar place in that Jokic has proven that he's been really, really good at times in the postseason, but they've never been able to break all the way through. Yes, he's been in the conference finals. Now he's in another one. This is his chance. Embiid is a cut below because they just cannot get out of the second round and out of their own way repeatedly. And it's even worse right now as we tape this after Game 7, losing Game 6 in Philly, Game 7 in Boston. The larger point, though, is that Jokic and Embiid, both of those guys have been seen as these terrific big men who can put up huge numbers in the regular season, but can't get through all the way when it matters the most. Jokic right now has a chance to forever flush that one down. And I'm not saying that he hasn't already flushed it
just
down
like Giannis did in 2021 when the narrative was. And let's just be 100%. Straight. The narrative a lot of times is dumb. Okay? It's dumb. It's dumb with Joker. It was dumb with Giannis. Dirk was a soft Euro until 2011, and he's holding a trophy. I mean, the narrative a lot of times is dumb.
It's dumb, but it sticks.
It does stick. And here's really what's available for Jokic, right? After the Bucks lost in the first round, what's available is if Nikola Jokic leads Denver to a title, if he beats LeBron, and he beats the Celtics to the Heat in the finals, wins the title, he's the best player, like, period. There's no argument anymore because he'll have gotten through. He got by Durant and Booker. People thought that they would destroy them defensively, and they held up okay. Now, obviously, Phoenix has depth issues, whatever. But by the end of that series, Booker and Durant were worn out, not playing very well. And if they could take down the Lakers with LeBron, with AD, with all of their guys that can run pick and roll at the Nuggets in a way that Phoenix really couldn't, that the Clippers really couldn't, that's sort of the one thing left for Jokic to check off, right? If a team like the Celtics did with Embiid today is hammering him with pick and rolls, how can he and the Nuggets handle that? I think they can handle it okay. I think their depth is great. Their synergy across the board is great. I don't know if the Lakers are going to be able to keep up with them scoring-wise. Obviously, I was dead ass wrong, as you were, MacMahon, as you said earlier, about the Lakers. They're obviously better than either of us thought. It's been incredibly impressive the way they've gone through these playoffs. LeBron has summoned it, multiple times, and I wasn't sure he was going to be able to. He was great in Game 6. Like, fully hats off to them. But Nikola Jokic can win 8 more games. To your point, Nick, he's the best player on the planet. Like, all the questions are answered. Yep. And that, even more than the narrative, that to me is what's in front of him. It's he can officially be the guy at the top of the heap.
You know what, though? And we always say, don't believe people who don't care about awards, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think he cares about being
That's bogus. I'm sorry. That's bogus. All of it's bogus. Hold on.
He cares about winning a championship, whether people
Will you just let Timmy B talk for once, MacMahon?
Shut up.
Just let him talk for once.
I'm allowed to interrupt him.
I am tired of hearing how Nikola Jokic doesn't care about any awards, doesn't care about any success, doesn't care about any of this stuff. This guy would not have become one of the great players to ever play the sport as a, doughy 7-foot guy from Sombor, Serbia, if he wasn't an insanely competitive guy that wants to be the best. Like, you can't have, that's not a real thing. I always thought that was just a ridiculous.
I didn't say he's not insanely competitive. I don't think that he cares about, on the talk shows, they're going to say I'm the number one guy. And I'll say this. I think he cared about MVP the last 2 years. I think this year he did not want it because he didn't want all the crap that came along with it, being 3 straight and the way that the conversation went. There's people with the Nuggets who basically told me, hey, Joker wanted nothing to do with it down the stretch this year. And
well,
that's the way
they're
played.
Their play represented that, right? They did not look like the same team.
Which, by the way, that play might very well cost them home court advantage in the NBA Finals. That play down the stretch. That's the difference between them hosting 1, 2, 5, and 7 and not having home court advantage.
Well, let's talk about that quick. The reason they might not is because they play the Boston Celtics potentially in the NBA Finals. The Celtics first, though, have to get by Denver has to get by the Lakers. We'll see if they could do that. We'll see if AD is the best player in the series again or not. As far as the Eastern Conference, you got the Celtics and the Heat. Celtics managed to get their way through this series, I would say rather unimpressively overall. Took them 7 games against a team that's not as good as them.
Wasn't impressed with that 51 by Tatum in Game 7 whatsoever.
No. Tatum was amazing today, but I would say overall in this series, the Celtics were not very impressive. They're 10-9 over the last 2 years in the playoffs at home. They blew the end of Game 4 when they had a chance to put this series away. They blew Game 5 in the first round. They had a chance to have this series start earlier and put that series away. They've had sort of a middling run through the playoffs so far, but they're in the conference finals. They're playing the Heat again, who they played last year, who they played 2 years before. Nick, you just covered the Heat. You're obviously going to be covering them with me in this series. What is your read on Miami, and what is your read on this series heading into it?
As far as Miami goes, they are just tough as hell. They are tough as hell. They feel like they are going to find a way. Spoelstra has talked about it. This is the Heat culture that everybody loves to roll their eyes at. But what scares me for them in this series, guys, is they just played Boston a year ago. Jimmy hits a 3. Maybe they go to the finals. But that team had P.J. Tucker, who just got knocked out with the Sixers. That team had a healthy Tyler Hero. It wasn't healthy at the end, but he was still available if they needed him. What scares me the most for Miami is who is going to score.
Yes.
That team can be tough and can defend like hell. And they got through another tough team in the Knicks, but Randall disappeared. You want to talk about big men disappearing in big games? Randall wasn't there. RJ Barrett wasn't there. It was Jalen Brunson and not much else. I don't know where Miami is going to find enough offense in a series where Boston just completely shut down Philly when they needed to at the end of that Sixers series. And guys, they just switch everything. This is a really, really good defensive team when they want to be. That to me is the edge.
Team when they play that lineup, which we talked about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which they should. I mean, I can't imagine they don't stick with it moving forward. Can you?
I'm pretty sure they're going to be sticking with that lineup, especially going up against a Heat team that tends to play Kevin Love and Bam Adebayo together. I would suspect they're going to be playing that lineup going into this series. And to me, Nick, also, what is to me, if Miami's going to have a chance in the series, they got to keep bombing away from 3 like they have been in these playoffs, shooting way better than they did in the regular season. And they've got to have Jimmy Butler playing like he was against Milwaukee. Do we think with the extra time he's had off going into this series, with the series going 7 games and not starting until Wednesday, do we think Jimmy could get back to somewhere near where he was in the Bucks series, or do we think physically he's not going to be the same guy? Because as great as he's been, I think if he's not at that level of physical power and force in this series, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Heat, like you said, to generate enough offense to keep up with these Celtics.
Timmy B, that's the question. In this series, that is the question. What can Jimmy do night to night? And I wouldn't put anything past him at this point. I mean, the amount of belief that he gives the rest of that group in that locker room is palpable. they believe they're going to win because they have Jimmy.
Yeah, imagine if that guy was still on the Sixers, right? Things might have been a little different in Philly if they had gone that path.
Jimmy, Tobias Harris, potato.
You want to talk about guys with long memories also. It always kills me. Jimmy sits there. I don't read any of what y'all write.
By the way, it's not actually Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is fine. They could have had Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. They got Al Horford and Josh Richardson instead of him. They could just be rolling out their lineup. They could realistically have a lineup right now of James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. That would be a pretty damn good team.
Yes, it's true.
Here's the problem, though, as far as that is concerned. What Jimmy remembers is the Tobias Harris part. And then we caught that clip that's run over and over and over again.
Of course.
But that's what always kills me about Jimmy. All these years, I don't pay attention to anything that's written or anything that's said. That is total and complete BS. He knows exactly who is writing what, who is saying what, and he files it away, and he uses it as fuel, as so many other greats that have come before him do. But Timmy B, back to the issue at hand with this series, what worries me is he really didn't play all that well against the Knicks because nobody knows Jimmy better than Tibbs. They put everybody they had all over him all the time, and they actually slowed him down. The issue for the Knicks is they just could not hit a shot. They could not knock down the open looks when they had them. So as far as timing, I think it hurts that it's every other night in this series. There's not going to be a lot of time to recoup. Doesn't mean that Jimmy can't go crazy, but if Boston's smart, they are going to just hammer him the way that the Knicks just did, wear him out and force somebody else to beat them over time. I don't think it can happen.
Boston Smart wears number 36.
Yeah, well, he's going to be all over Jimmy plenty, I'm sure.
Well, they got a lot of guys to throw at him. Derek White,
exactly.
Marcus Smart. They could
Tatum
throw
will get
Brown
a chance.
at him, Jason Tatum. I mean, they could throw a ton of bodies at him. I mean, look, Boston should win this series. Like, they're probably the deepest, most talented team left. But as we saw against Philly, they like to mess around. They don't close games. And the Heat are mentally tough and forge through many, many battles over time. And if the Celtics mess around in that series, they could let the Heat in a position to potentially steal it, just like they almost did last year. But you mentioned Jalen Brunson. Unbelievable performance again in Game 6. Like, I think few guys have seen their stock rise more over the past few months. I actually was texting with Windhorst earlier. I think you can, I mean, I'm starting to wonder if you can make an argument about him with the elite point guards in the league, you know, like a certain guy in Memphis, maybe Ja Morant.
Listen, who would you rather have right now, Jalen Brunson or Ja Morant?
I was trying to tee you up.
It's not even a contest.
I would rather have Jalen Brunson.
Point guard is a position for adults. You cannot be led by a child and have a chance to win when it matters in the NBA. Your point guard cannot require a babysitter, okay? The Grizzlies have never beaten a serious basketball. These Grizzlies, this group, the post-grit and grind Grizzlies, have never beaten a serious basketball team in a playoff series. They beat the freaking Minnesota Timberwolves, okay?
Well, and let's back up for 1 second. Just before, I probably should have
on that
interrupted
team?
the rant, but just so just in case there's listeners who are not aware of what happened today, though I doubt there are many.
No, people who actually enjoyed Mother's Day didn't have to spend it, because some doofus did another idiotic thing on Instagram.
To call back to the beginning of the pod, when I said MacMahon is in an even earlier mood than usual today, it's because he woke up this morning to an Instagram live post that circulated on the internet of Ja Morant appearing to have a firearm in his hand, as he did a couple months ago in a entertainment establishment in Denver. This time he was in a car hanging out with a couple of friends. The NBA announced that they're looking into the matter. Spokesman Mike Bass said that to Adrian. And then the Grizzlies, rather quickly, in my opinion, and I think tellingly, suspended Morant from all team activities until the league investigation is concluded. Now, you can look at that and say, well, this is happening in May. Their season's over. Why does it matter? To me, it matters from the standpoint that back in March or February, I think it was in March, when this happened the first time, generally the the moves that were taken were, we're going to wait and see. We're going to let things play out. There was no immediate action taken. This time it was very swift, even if it seems like, not anything drastic in the moment. I think the fact that Memphis did something, and you would know better than me, big man, I think signals that this is going to be handled quite a bit differently this time around than it was the first time, both by the Grizzlies and by the league.
They're done making excuses for them. They're done enabling, and you can say, well, it took a while, but hey, it's reached that point. And look, man, at this point, really, the Grizzlies suspend them. Okay, you can't use their gym during off season. You can't, the draft buffet is off limits. Okay, you can say whoopie damn do. Well, the big deal is, what's Adam Silver going to do? Because it wasn't just an 8-game suspension. It was hey, you need to come to New York. We need to have a sit down in my office. You need to understand exactly how serious this situation is. His dumb ass didn't make it through one playoff round of being off without having something blow up. Last time we talked to Ja, I was like, okay, that's encouraging, because I asked him an open-ended question about leadership, and he responded with, I've just got to be better with my decision making. That's pretty much it. Off the court issues affected us as an organization pretty much. Just need more discipline. Well, you know what he was doing one weekend later? He was hosting parties at clubs in Atlanta and promoting them on Instagram. Dude, is that do you want to be like some cool dude? Do you want teenagers to think you're, oh wow, look at Ja, man, he's cool, he's keeping it real? Or do you want to be a freaking NBA superstar? Because you better make a choice. And right now, I hope those clubs pay you well, buddy, because you're putting you already cost yourself $39 million by being a dummy. Okay, you're putting the rest of that contract at stake. That Nike signature shoe endorsement deal, those are going to be the Ja one and dones, because I cannot imagine Nike. Why would you continue investing in this guy if you don't have to? I'm sure there's character clauses in that contract. They probably are going to end up pulling the plug on him. And dude, do you know how many people Ja Morant is letting down because he wants to look cool? Look at me, man. We're rapping. I got a gun. What a doofus. And dude, your buddy, Devontae Pack, the dude who's mooching off you and making you look like an idiot over and over again. Hey, look. Oh, man, we're rapping. Look, I'm Devontae Pack. I'm going to put it on IG Live. D-Tap 2. Everybody follow me. I'm Ja's boy. Way to go, idiot. I mean, these guys are just children. They're like these middle school wannabe gangsters. They're like, Ja is trying to be cool, makes himself look like a total fool, and his trade value is lower than Jordan Poole. How's that for some damn rap? Put a beat behind that.
Wow, there you go. There's only two things to add to that, Mr. McMahon. One, what the hell kind of friends does Ja Morant have? He got in trouble for being on Instagram Live. So guess what we're going to do a few weeks later? We're going to put him back on Instagram Live, and we're just going to hope for the best. I mean, what kind of friends does this guy have that they would put him in that spot to begin with?
More Hoop Collective podcast after this.
Union Pacific Railroad wants you to join its team. It's an opportunity that comes with great pay and benefits. There are a variety of open roles across its 23-state network, including train crew positions with hiring and relocation incentives in some locations. You can even get a free college education while working. Union Pacific Railroad connects thousands of communities, hauling goods Americans rely on every day. Get your career on the right track with Union Pacific and apply today at up.jobs/sports. That's up.jobs/sports.
The NBA doesn't really do anything unless they get embarrassed. And Ja Morant, in this case, like Kyrie Irving from months ago, with the repeated issues that occurred with that situation in Brooklyn, has finally embarrassed the league. And when you do that, when it gets to that point, that's when something finally happens. And it's like somebody shakes up Adam Silver's office and goes, oh, it's time to actually do something here. So the league has gotten to a point now where its hand is forced almost in this particular case. And
yeah, Adam Silver bent over backwards not to slap this guy on the wrist. And dude, there was incident after incident after. His boys put a red laser on the Pacers after a post-game confrontation when they pretended like they were going to fight during the game, and Ja didn't get suspended. Are you kidding me?
More Hoop Collective podcast after this.
They call it running a business for a reason, because every day feels like a sprint to the finish. It takes a lot of work to make it all work. But with Clover and Merchant One, you're always a step ahead. Now is the perfect time to upgrade your point of sale technology. We make it easy to accept payments, run your entire business, and sell more. Clover plus Merchant One, better business solutions. Go to clover.com/M1 to get started.
Technically, what Ja did in this instance was not illegal, right? And that might end up being a defense. They were in Atlanta yesterday, but I know this because they went to their favorite jeweler who makes these beautiful MB&O, like diamond encrusted medallions for their real thick gold chains. And so, they were either in Georgia or maybe they were driving back home. Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. They've all got open carry laws. Technically, what Ja did was idiotic, but not illegal. But you know what? The NBA is not the NBA is not bound by the laws of Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama. Adam Silver has plenty of leeway to punishment. And the other thing I've seen, why is it okay for these politicians to pose with AR-15s and this, that, and the other? And look, there's a hell of a point to be made there, and there's a totally separate discussion to be had there. I will just say that there are higher standards to work for the NBA than to work for the NRA.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, actions over words when it comes to Ja, and let's see what Adam Silver's actions are when it comes to this moving forward. And what does he decide to do? I think there's a lot of people, as Adrian talked about on TV earlier, I saw on Countdown, my conversation with people today here at the game, having people, talking to people around the league about it. A lot of people are paying attention to what Adam Silver does in this moment now with this going forward. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the league reacts to this, because there's going to be a lot of eyes, not only on Ja, but on Adam Silver, to see if he comes down on Ja, what the punishment is, what things look like here moving forward. Now, real quick, before we go.
I'll say this. I don't think Ja's going to have a chance at All-NBA because I don't think he's playing enough games next year.
Well, that will be the cutoff for that is 65 games in the new CBA, for those who don't remember. So we will see where that lands. Before we go, though, between now and the next pod on Wednesday, there is a certain lottery taking place on Tuesday, involving a certain Frenchman, Victor Wembanyama, who will all but certainly be the number one pick in the draft, barring something truly insane. What is our preferred Victor destination? Do we have one we're hoping for? Do we have one that we would like to see? What do we think?
Orlando Magic. Magic.
Friedell wants to go home and Friedell wants to go home and put some Disney ears on.
Friedell,
my head's grown a little bit.
Hey, I'll say this. From a basketball, well, no doubt. You might have to get like satellite dishes and bolt them on.
No question.
That big old dome.
No question.
Man, from a basketball standpoint, though, Orlando would be something to see, baby, because they got two young studs that they're building around. Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, and both those guys are multi-skilled, can put it on the floor, can create. You throw Victor in that mix, and they've got cap space. They can go sign a point guard. You've heard rumblings about a Fred VanVleet, that type of guy. That could be really fun real quick. I think, long-term, like development wise, even though they don't have those high caliber, like potential star pieces already in place, there's a team down I-35 for me that's done pretty well developing generational 7-footers after selective tanking. And I am referring to, of course, the San Antonio Spurs.
Well, I'm just looking at the top 10 or 12 teams right here, right now. So if he ends up with Detroit, I really think the fit with him and Cade Cunningham long term is really interesting. Assuming Cade can get over the chin stuff that cost him last season. You mentioned the stuff with the Spurs. They obviously have a track record. They have some interesting young players. He would be the focal point of that thing. I think Victor would like to be the focal point somewhere, so you'd probably be intrigued by that. The idea of Victor Wembanyama playing with LaMelo Ball in Charlotte would be pretty fascinating. You talk about like the YouTube team of the league, that would be the Charlotte Hornets. Everybody, 25 and under would be all about that team, and it'd be very fun just to watch those guys going up and down. Same if he ends up in Portland. Victor and Dame be pretty fun to watch. You guys talked about Orlando. The one that might be most intriguing of these teams is Indiana. You put him with Miles Turner, Tyrese Halliburton, some of the pieces they've got there. They also have cap space this summer. What about the team in Dallas with Luka Doncic?
That's a 3% chance, but yeah, it'd be pretty interesting. Hey, how about Houston? It'd be the beard and the beanpole, baby.
That would certainly be an interesting combination with Jalen Green and whoever else they have there too. The point is, though, I think wherever Victor winds up, we see every few years there's a lottery that comes along like this. And I don't know if he's as good of a prospect as Luka was, but he's certainly being treated in a different way than Luka was coming into the draft.
Luka obviously slipped to third, and the Mavs trade up to get him. 3 teams passed on him, and that wasn't considered like crazy thinking.
Yes, that's my point. I thought that was crazy at the time when you looked at Luka's track record. I thought he should have been a blow-away prospect, but he wasn't. It's really, if you look over the last 20 years or so, it's LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Victor as the 3 guys.
Zion was a pretty clear cut.
Yeah, that's fair. If you want to include
mega height number 1, 2.
That's true.
But look, there's people who say, and people who've been in the league, been evaluating prospects in the league that say this guy's the best prospect since LeBron.
Yeah, 7'5", can shoot it. Obviously, incredible defensive potential. He does.
Put it on the floor. Like there's Durant-like elements to his game.
The host of this podcast loves Victor Wembanyama.
Well, there's a reason why we are talking about the lottery, because our guy in absentia, as we know, he's been all over the Victor story. So we will see what happens Tuesday night. Brian should be back to talk about it. Well, he's on assignment.
Where?
He's on assignment.
Oh. Nobody ever tells me anything.
I was told to say that Brian is on assignment, and we will talk about what he's doing later in the week. So that is what we will do. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Hoop Collective. Hopefully you will actually listen to it again after this train wreck of a pod. The adult in the room will be back on Wednesday to take control again. We'll have a good week, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
Adios, amigos.